Hi guys, Doom here. It is about 30 minutes from launch, and they have dropped the patch notes for the game. So I'm going to go through these real quick, because I think there's definitely some interesting changes. I think some balance swings were pretty hard, but some of them made sense, and some of them didn't, and I'd like to talk about that as I break down the things they've added to the game since open beta. They're adding the scrap crates, they're adding an in-game cosmetic shop. They're adding more player cards. These are all things that we kind of knew about from the dev stream. They're adding a badge system where you have two badges underneath your character that lets people know what you're up to, and you can put different things on there. One of them is the infamy system, which is made it real clear, it's not a ranked system. It's opt-in. When you win, your infamy goes up. When you lose, it goes down. And the higher you go up the infamy system, the more points you're going to lose from losing games. And there's a certain threshold, I think they called it Marauder. Each defeat past Marauder, you will lose infamy. It resets every month, so you can try and earn the badges and titles, I believe. And you keep the titles. You keep the titles, but the badges are just for that month. It resets at the first of each calendar month, so I wonder if they're going to use Infamy for their in-game MMR, or if it's just going to be for your badge and maybe the infamous crew and the Lucky Docks. I would like to see the Lucky Dock ship be the ship with the most infamy. I hope that's how it works. It doesn't say that anywhere. I don't know what metrics determines the infamous ship. I definitely would like to know that. Another one of the badges is they're going to allow you to have your win streak as a badge and put that in a slot underneath your character. Now, when people get killed by you, or when you're, I think it's maybe spectating your teammates, I'm not sure. It's mainly on people who get killed by you. They see these badges. And then you'll have your badges displayed to your crew at the end of the match as well in the end screen. And the longer ones are called milestones, like 100 artifact wins for archaeologists. These are essentially like long-term achievements at that point. They did more info on the scrap crate system as well. First off, they're not loot boxes. Secondly, they're not random. It's a completely fixed track, and when you find them, everyone in your crew gets XP, and everyone gets an item. So there's no infighting for them. It's if you see a scrap crate, you open it up. They're typically, looks like they're typically in loot rooms, POI loot rooms, so it'll be a nice, easy added cosmetic track. Now, it's not always a cosmetic. It's sprays, fireworks, ship names, audio lines for your characters. Ooh, they said they might even have prospect or ship and weapon styles. Well, that'd be cool if there was actually a ship skin or a weapon skin inside of these as well. But nobody knows what the actual track is. It hasn't been leaked or anything like that. So it's a matter of just playing and looting 150 scrap crates. Now, it's a pretty easy system for them to just add more to. And if they add more to at different levels, they can make it so you just get the earlier ones that they've added into the next in your line, which is pretty neat. Doing an in-game cosmetic shop, they're stating at about $5 to $15 per item. I'm not sure what's going to be in the in-game shop. It's going to be used, premium currency is going to be called credits. Items going to rotate every 2 weeks. Yet to see what that looks like. Definitely excited to jump in the game and see what the in-game store looks like, what they're kind of offering. There were some people who felt frustrated within some parts of the community about the value of the Renegade cosmetics being $20, and I'm kind of curious what they're going to do for characters and ships in terms of cosmetics, because people seem to be very polarized and interested in good cosmetics, which I found really interesting because I'm here for the gameplay of the game. Cosmetics are just a side thing for me. Let's see. They reduced the time in the Lucky Docks. And the Wildgates revealed all crews once it opens. These are big changes that I actually just missed as I was glossing over this. One of the problems you would have in the default game mode artifact hunt is you'd get the artifact, you didn't probe and scan. Maybe you're playing really aggressive, maybe you got in an early fight. You wouldn't know where the Wildgate is, but you have the artifact in your hand. And you don't know where it's at. You do not know where to fly, but you just got this artifact on board, which would lead to like having to send 2 or 4 of your guys on probes and start scanning around. And it's one of the most helpless moments in the game when you're trying to get away. So this change is great for the end game of matches. This is great for crews that something happened. They got distracted. They got in a bad fight. They barely survived. Their ship was on fire. They somehow get the artifact, and they're like, we're being chased, but we don't know where to go. That won't happen anymore. And the minus 15 seconds to the Lucky Docks is nice. The Lucky Docks is like a pre-lobby, and it loads the game in there. What it does is it actually loads the map. It generates the map on your client, on your computer, on your console, while you're there, and it hides that loading there so that when the announcement of all the different ship names and ships pops up, your game's already loaded and everybody warps in. It's just a big hidden loading screen. But I'm glad they lowered it down by 15 seconds because mostly it just involves people shooting at each other, making a bunch of noise. It's greatly appreciated. Some changes to the monolith entrances. They can be farther away, and the ancient vault is now moved towards the center of the map. Those, I think, are also good changes. I like those. The Cosmic Storm was buffed. So the storm will usually be around the monolith, and when you go inside of it, it would damage you and your ship unless you had a storm shield on your ship. Players can't avoid it at all. And the damage stick is insane. Even at 6, it was insane. You could barely use a turbine to breach because you would take so much damage in the storm trying to get to another ship. This means now that if you're in the storm, you are not doing any sort of boarding and breaching enemy ships because you're going to die too fast in the reach. I think this is a good change. It really strengthens the storm and the storm gameplay because now you absolutely have to have a storm barrier if you're planning on going in it, and you're absolutely not boarding other ships. Little change here. Reach queens are bigger. It's definitely cool to differentiate them. They're differentiated by colors. They're big red dragons that come out of the ground and start shooting at you, shoot laser beams. The blue ones would be the weaker ones, but you would only know that by their nameplate and their color. Now it will be, this is obviously a bigger threat. The Reach Queen actually leaves a big AoE when she teleports, so she's a big old pain in the butt as far as PvE, one of the stronger PvE enemies. Now here's the interesting one for ships, and I guarantee you Dreamhaven and Moonshot have seen a bunch of my gameplay at this point, because I can see where they're going with this. First up, they upped ship maneuverability. This was a blanket change for all ships to make piloting a little bit better. I like it. I agree with it. Things felt a little bit sluggish for some people, self-included. People need to remind themselves that they can free look in this game. It needs to actually happen. It helps you pilot a bunch. I don't know what the bindings are in console, but it's right-click on PC. Look around, pay attention, talk to your crew. Helps pilot out so much. So they've done some health adjustments to... All of the ships have had health adjustments. They specifically mentioned the Privateer being very powerful in beta for crews who learned how to maximize the ship's front guns. I 100% agree. The Privateer has amazing firepower, and it also had the second best health in the game. The only thing the Privateer didn't have was speed, which made one thing the Privateer's main threat, and that is the Scout. And the Scout with the laser ram or landmines could put pressure with those hardpoints more than the other ships. So I'm a bit biased. I work on a Privateer crew, and my pilot is our Privateer pilot, is actually my girlfriend. So I'm hyper biased to Privateer changes because that's what I'm going to play probably the entire lifespan of the game. The velocity is just so strong. It adds 50% velocity to the projectiles. It makes gunning at range and hitting your shots so much more easier, which means you get more effective DPS on target. So while they might have better health to size ratios than the Privateer, the other ships, the Privateer can do more effective damage, which is an important term to understand. I can actually hit my target at 500 plus meters. They won't. They'll have trouble. And you can get better. You can get better if leading. But ultimately, a Privateer that's moving around while you're trying to lead shots is going to be more difficult for those other crews that don't have Privateer cannons to fire back. This one was also interesting. They do not want to go back to the crazy moments of the overload reactor moments of the community previews. This was really rough. The first playtests before they changed this were really just dominated by boarding. But they did buff the fires a little bit. What it was, when you overload the ship, it makes fires. more fires. Eventually you get to a point where if a fire tries to spawn, it deals damage to the ships. So I think this is a good change. This is a chaotic change. This isn't direct damage to the ships. It's you're ignoring the overload and letting your ship catch on fire. That's why I think this is the better way to handle overloads. It's a less immediate instant damage like it was in the community playtest 1 and 2, which are long gone and old balance now. Obviously talking about ships churning and accelerating faster as part of the movement buff, the blanket movement buff. And the health changes. This is where I think it's fairly interesting. The Hunter had its health up by 90. I agree, the Hunter was in the worst spot. I felt like the Hunter was the weakest in the lineup of the ships. And the Scout had more health than the Hunter, which I thought was kind of bizarre because they had similar fire profiles. I mean, the Scout has less guns, but they had similar shape and design and how you play them, because the Scout has 2 front guns, the Hunter has 3. The Scout has 1 on the rear, the Hunter has 2, but they are both wedge shapes. So they played exactly the same, but they gave the Scout the health and the speed, which I feel like was why the Scout was dominating in the open beta. The other changes that I also liked was the Privateer's health has been reduced a little bit. I think it's a fair change. Like I said, I am biased because Privateer is the ship that I'm going to pilot in this game. It's the ship that I'm going to board with on this game. It's my whole crew's favorite. I think this is a fair change. It makes the TTK fairly close for all the ships, other than the Bastion, which, once again, the Bastion's the turtle ship. It already had more health than the Privateer by a long shot. That health number started to get really crazy when you start adding ship cores and mega cores to it. At one match, I saw our Bastion had 210 health, which was just astronomical. These reductions in health overall will shore up how long it takes to completely eliminate someone from the game. And I think in combination with the potential for the gate being faster, I don't know if they actually sped the gate time up, and lower health, it'll reduce the game length a bit because it'll be easier to finish someone off. Huge changes to ship design that are going to change how you breach and get into ships. The charge stations are moving the Scout. That's small. But the big one is secure doors now have double the health. They had 200, they now have 400. I don't know how much this affects Ion's punch, but this means that ship fire is going to be harder to rip off a secure door. This is a huge buff to anywhere where secure doors are at, which is typically the front of ships, the front of the Privateer, the front of the Scout, the front of the Hunter, and all doors of the Bastion are secure doors. This is a good change, but this is only 400 health. You need to understand that some of these things bypass this still completely and entirely, and that would be the Drill. The Drill does 800 damage after this patch, so the Drill's still going to go right through this. Ion might take a little bit longer, because Ion would take multiple hits to get through these doors. So this will slow down the oppressiveness of Ion just walking into your base, but it will not stop the oppressiveness if a user decides to pick Drills to go through your doors. Then, in addition to this, Helm window health is increased to 1,000 from 200. This is a massive, massive buff to pilots. It's clear they are trying to give pilots more power within the game. This will make it so that a single drill cannot break the helm window. This will make it so that it's going to take a lot more hits for Ion to get through the helm window as well. So those aggressive Ion breachers, they're going to have to go through doors, they're going to have to open up windows, or they're going to have to bring drills themselves to speed up that window break, because you won't be able to just sit above the pilot's helm and be oppressive forever, because you gotta remember, while this is increased to 1,000, think about the consequences of this buff. If this helm window is breached by 2 drills at once, and a person gets in, and you dispatch them, and you repair that helm window again, it's 1,000 health again. The next person that was planning to come through has to do the same whole thing again. So once you stop that breacher on the helm window and get a little bit of a repair in, it's absolutely going to provide safety to you. This also affects ship combat greatly. One of the biggest things you could do when you're in a frontal fight, front on front, is target the helm. Shut down their pilot's ability to maneuver the ship, change the shields, boost, or anything. If you have someone coming at you with, say, laser rams or landmines or something really aggressive like scatter cannons, you could just shoot the helm up and move out of the way. Back up. You can't really do that as well now. The helm becomes less of a juicy target for all the gunners. And pilots will rejoice because now pilots will die less. Pilots will definitely die less because of this. This is a huge buff to pilot survivability, which is going to put killing the pilot on more so boarding from doors in the rear of the ship, and less so from oppressively camping the top of the ship. But you can still do it, you just need to bring the equipment to do it. Like I said, drills are going to be the way to bypass this. 2 drills will be the way to bypass the helm window buff to get inside. Another one that's really big, and this is interesting because they lower the health of all the ships, but they buffed shield regen by 2.5 times, so shield panels will stay down longer for a minute instead of 45 seconds, but they regen faster. So you don't need to have your shields toggled on as long to get the extra bonus, but the way shields work in this the way they work in this game is when you put your shields on, they're at low health. And then over time, they reach maximum strength. So you need to remember to keep your shields on until you need to actually be moving around. If you just decide to reactively turn them on, you get very little health out of them. So if you put them on and you're being shot in the front, all panels are just going to start breaking immediately from a single basic ship cannon shot. That's why it takes longer to kill some people's shields than others. And not a lot of players seem to know that. It's not really... I don't really feel like it's construed anywhere in the game. I'd like to see something in the UI for it, so that you can, other than just the color and thickness of the shield and the shield thing, something that was like just a little bar that maybe that shows like shield strength or something like that, or overall shield strength. It would be interesting to have something along those lines that would let pilots know what their shields are exactly doing. Changes to stealing as well. They reverted the ship steal interact from the open beta. It used to take 2 seconds to steal, and you could teleport out while taking damage. There's changes to teleporting as well. So when you take damage while teleporting, it resets the teleport. So if someone's stealing your gun and you put 1 bullet into them, it's going to reset their teleport. So it's going to be, if you can hit someone, you can stop their teleport. This will change a couple things. One, when you're in a fight with someone who wants to disengage, they can't teleport if you just landed a bullet on them during that teleport sequence. Now, the teleport hold bar is not that long. It might only be a second or something like that. But it will definitely stop some people from trying to reset, say they're pushing with the turbine and they get shot. Normally, every interaction I've seen with people is they teleport away when they think they're going to lose a fight. It's going to be harder to do that now, because if you're losing the fight and you're going to die, you're not going to be able to teleport. They're making reactors overload spawn fires every 3 seconds to 5 seconds. And this seems like they're pushing very hard into reactor overload being the boarding method of dealing damage, which I'm completely fine with. The fight for the overload on the reactor is a good one across all ships. It's something you always need to worry about for. I think these are good changes for, boarding and hostile engagements. I think this is the way to go. The oppressive health loss of the older playtest I didn't like. Sail salvageability no longer has a delay. This was a quality of life thing. Before it didn't have a delay, then they added one, then they realized people just didn't really like it, and it really didn't provide anything to the game. I don't know if it was because of, they didn't want sail to be too fast, or what, or if it was a server issue, but apparently it functions fine without a delay, so they're just going to keep it like that. As far as weapon changes go, there is quite a bit going on here. First off, the Amy got its massive nerf. Its damage per shot was reduced by a third. Its clip size was reduced by a third. But it carries 2 more clips, and the homing was reduced by 50%, which is probably the range in which the projectiles have to be near the actual target. So if you can still aim with an Amy, that nerf doesn't affect you that much, but the DPS is going to be 33% less, which is good, because before the Amy had the same DPS as someone with the Mark II Blaster Assault Rifle, aiming about 80% of their shots. People did the math on this, and it was absolutely insane. The Amy was too oppressive in the open beta. It just needed a DPS lowering, because the Amy is there for people who can't aim. You're going to do less damage than somebody with the Mark II Blaster Assault Rifle, but it's there so that if you aim in the general direction of the enemy, you actually deal damage, period. I will still play with the Amy for a little bit and try it out, but I think the DPS nerf is going to make it lose firefights against people who can aim, which is probably should be the case. They buffed the beam rifle. They gave it more ammo. That's appreciated. The sonic boom has a bigger projectile radius, which is another one. It's good. A shotgun in this game that's so massive gets limited use. It's used for pretty much aggressive boarding. And the Mark II Blaster and the Surefire, I believe Mark II Blaster is the default assault rifle. The Surefire is the very loud pistol. They buffed the projectile speed. These are big buffs for bullet-based weapons that allow you to hit targets easier from farther away. I love these buffs, by the way. These are awesome because this means now your rounds are landing on target more often. In these medium-range space fights, you don't have to lead as much. The Doctor's DPS was decreased to 70 from 80. This is a small nerf. I still think the Doctor actually has great potential in your loadout and is one of the it's one of the more versatile weapons. It doesn't have very long range, but I don't think this DPS nerf really makes it bad at all. It's a very small DPS decrease. It was very good in PvP and limited usages where you could get an angle on the enemy, and the particle effects that hit your character are almost blinding. So getting hit by the Doctor's offensive damage is devastating. But its utility in PvE is great. If you use the Doctor and you have an eye on your crew, you can just heal the Ion and let him punch all the enemies, and that's what I do on my crew, and it's great. So I can still see the Doctor being my secondary at this point, and it might be Surefire Doctor for me, because I felt like the Surefire, after its nerfs in the playtest, was not as dominant, but with this velocity increase, it's going to make those shots land, boom, real snappy. I'm excited to get a hold of, you know, the Surefire with its buff, and I still think the Doctor's good at this point. The Amy, it's going to be tough to figure out where that sits. The DPS decrease is also going to affect PvE as well, but the extra ammo, once again, bumps it back in PvE. Let's go over here to the grenades and whatnot. So, this is what I was talking about earlier, the Helm Glass and the drill charges. They reduced the damage from 1,000 to 800, and that's so that it can't use one drill to break into the helm. It no longer deals 1 damage to ships. I thought this was a strong buff they gave the drill charge, because you could take and use drill charges off of the turbine. You could boost straight into an enemy and an enemy ship, and you could place 2 drills, and you could teleport back, get on your turbine, and go again, and you could do 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, and just add that damage as you're boarding. I'm fine with that change. I use drills. Drills are one of my main equipment. It makes sense that it doesn't deal 1 damage. That was kind of ridiculous. It was just, you're already breaching, and it's just insult to injury. I mean, longer fights, that adds up. It adds up fast. You're going to deal 10, 20 damage over a long fight if you have a breacher with a drill charge. And if you really wanted to be cheeky, you could have taken multiple people, which I don't know if anyone did. The blast can damage has been reduced, but its radius has been increased greatly. So, the blast can was not used that much. I would be very rarely killed by it, but the extra AoE is a nice buff to it, because it's going to make you, actually get those hits. You gotta remember, at point blank range, 150 damage is Ion and Sam only have 125 health. So at point blank range, the blast can kills everybody still. But it means that if you're not in the center of the splash, it's only going to deal half of a normal character's health, like Adrian. I think Moffs has, what, 80? I can't exactly remember the health pools right now at the top of my head. I know Moffs has reduced health. So even with reduced health on the outer side of the splash, you're not going to be insta-killed by it. Where before you would. Moffs would die just to any grenade from the blast can. Period, with the amount of damage it dealt. There's actually a nerf to the rock. Oh my god, rocks can be thrown at interactable buttons inside the ship to activate them? That's hilarious. I highly doubt anybody's going to use that, but that means you can throw a rock at the parking brake now on a ship to stop it. They reduced the charges by 1. It was pretty strong. I saw very few crews use this, but the ones that did understood the value of it. The rock does so much damage that I do believe it insta-kills all prospectors. This will change maybe some of the high-end cheeky gameplay from high-skill people who understand how to aim this strange foreign weapon that no one understands how to use. But Most crews will probably be using guns, so you won't see a lot of rocks, but now you'll see a little bit less, because they won't be able to kill 3/4 of your crew if they're very good at throwing a stone at your head. I want to jump down to loot. They're talking about minor adjustments to the laser ram and mine layer. They understand some players would probably prefer a heavier hand in these changes, but we don't want to overcorrect here. We're keeping an eye on these going forward. So I haven't actually seen the actual gun stuff. I looked at the laser ram and the mine layer earlier. The fire shield makes it so fires no longer spread burst. They spread one at a time. And effect properly applies the stacks to all fire spawning. So buff to the fire shield, agreed. The fire shield needs to be really good because, I mean, if you're slotting a whole slot for your fire shield, I would hope it prevents fires. I would hope it reduces fires. Laser rams were nerfed by changing mostly where they're at in the loot pool. They reduced the DPS from 3.5 to 3, but changing the loot pool of them, I feel like was more important of a change. Laser rams were very common. Often I'd have 2 or 3, you know, per match we would find, and because I'm on a ship that doesn't have front hardpoints, I was playing the Privateer, we'd have almost no use for them, so I just felt like they were useless loot to me, but everybody and their brother and the other crews would always have at least one laser ram. By making it less common, you make the meta for it less prevalent, for sure. I do think laser rams should be the prevalent front hardpoint for aggression. I think laser rams and scouts synergize perfectly. They should be the de facto, this is I want to get close to you and I want to deal high damage to you. I still, you know, I didn't think that they needed particularly a nerf at all in terms of DPS. I thought they were effective for what they are. But lowering the chance that they appear means that it's less reliable of a strategy for people because you have to get lucky when you loot that, or you have to go steal one. The mine layer, which the damage has been increased to 10 from 12, and the cooldown has been increased up. These are small changes to the mine layer. Mine layer was a pretty hot topic across my crew and other crews because the mine layer can be used in a defensive manner. I was hoping to see, like I said, they're thinking these are small changes. They didn't want to be too heavy-handed with the mine layer changes. I wanted to see landmines have less benefit from velocity increase of being deployed, because when you deploy mines, they inherit the velocity of the ship when they float forward, and you get all 3 of those hits. By reducing the damage, increasing the cooldown, at least you give people more time to respond to it. One thing I think that could help is, number one, identifying what a mine layer actually looks like, because the hardpoint has 4 red lights and a grinder in the middle, but it's just not as, what I want to say, it's not as obvious or evident that it's an extreme threat because the model is inset and doesn't have much of a silhouette in terms of shape. So ultimately what the players see is they see gray and they see 4 little red lights, and I feel like that's not enough of a telegraph to the player that this is something that can kill your entire ship if it's pointed at your face. I'd like to see something big and red for the mine layer. I'd like to see it be way more obvious that this is death. Maybe instead of 4 little red lights, maybe make it a big, thick red light around the outside of it. Something that screams danger, not just I'm a red light bulb. That's my 2 cents in the mine layer. Just telegraph to the player what it is more, so when they're scouting it with a probe, or it's right in front of them, they go, oh god, they've got a mine layer on the front, rather than most people not really noticing what it is. I feel like other things like the security system and the shock field have more telegraphed shapes and colors that allow a boarder to know what it is from the outside. I feel the mine layer fails a little bit in regards of identification. I think that's part of the problem. Security device can now close all the doors after activating the button. This is a really cool one because on certain ships you have a hard point right next to you. You can just throw a security device there and hit it, and you'll just auto-close all your doors. Oh man, I didn't actually see these changes here. The scatter cannon got buffed. It's got a projectile speed buff and a damage to shields and ship parts buff. This is actually awesome, because the scatter cannon, I would argue, was one of the weaker weapons. It was typically scrapped by our sale or thrown out. It was last pick. Now that's been changed so that it can be a little bit more a piece of utility for ships. It'll be less of a, I'm going to throw this out. The sniper nerf was a big one. The sniper was devastating in the open beta. It was dealing twice the damage to hardpoints, and it had 5 shots. They reduced the shots by 1. They got rid of the hardpoint damage bonus. Sniper cannons won games. Sniper cannons would literally find your hardpoints and just select and delete them. They would shut down entire gunfights because if you had a sniper cannon, it meant that you weren't winning the DPS fight, but you're winning the control fight. You could just take the control away from the other crew completely. So I'm all for this change. The sniper already does good damage, and it can still deal normal damage to hardpoints, so it can still very easily focus, say, someone with an entropy cannon that's shooting right at your face, try to shut it down. But having less shots and no longer dealing the double damage hardpoints also means it's not going to be as oppressive for taking out helms as well, which is a good change, I think. The Clampjet's immune to ship explosion damage. This change is absolutely needed. This caused some weird jank. So when a ship would die, the Clampjets would all fire off, and it would send the corpse of the ship flying away at 400 meters a second somewhere else. I'm really glad they changed this. This will stop it. Stop Clampjets from going off when you've got them in your ship and you get hit by a landmine as well. All in all, good changes. Star Lance damaged up. That's fine. There's not a lot of Star Lances in the loot pool. The extra damage means that, particularly this number 1000, means that it can still take out a helm window in one shot. So Star Lance gets some new utility as one of the few weapons that can just destroy the helm glass on ships immediately. And you can salvage the vault key, which is a nice little quality of life thing, because before you couldn't. They changed respawns a bit, and this is, they're trying to add pretty much a defender bonus here. The respawn time is 16, but dying on your ship reduces it by 4 seconds. This will give more defender advantage. I feel like this is good. I feel like finding a balance between boarding and rewarding defending is a really good take on the balance of their own game. I like the defender's advantage because you should have home turf advantage. And they've definitely worked on that because in the earlier playtests, when the game was first, shown to people, the spawns and spawn locations and spawn times were very, very rough to a point where you could be locked down completely by enemy boarders, and it felt very bad. And between all the door changes and the helm glass changes, they've just kept boosting and buffing your ship. I mean, they've added more helm glass, they added security doors that ships didn't have, they buffed the security doors, they buffed, the glass, they changed overloads to not do direct health damage. These are all things that they clearly are trying to give a defender advantage. If you're down a person, you get reduced respawn, and you get a reduction in fires, which I think is also really cool. It's for people who are missing a fourth, they're missing a third. You only got 2-3 people, or you're playing solo, you madman. You will get a reduction in respawn and get reduced fires. And the teleport home nerf. This was one that I wholeheartedly approve of, where if you get shot, your teleport is restarted from the start. So this will stop people in gunfights from just teleporting out, which is one of my little pet peeves. I played a game a long time ago. I played PlanetSide 2, and early on in the game, they had an ability to just delete your own vehicle, and it had vehicle combat in it. And if you're about to lose a fight, some people would just hit the delete their vehicle button. And this teleport home in the open beta reminds me of that. Somebody's about to lose a fight, so they just disappear. I like this change. This makes it so that you can kill people who are stealing, or you can kill people who are trying to run away from a firefight instead of them just disappearing. They adjusted the reward checks so that you can get ships and weapons earlier, and they added some new outfits. So the people who were upset about the Renegade skin pack, I mean, seems like they've replaced the Renegade skin pack that was in open beta, which is now paid, with some more cosmetics. So there's more stuff to unlock, which is always good. More cosmetics is always going to be good. I'm not as interested in the spectator changes. They've changed some probes, scanning elements, what it looks like. You can fly around in free cam. They made the player cam a little bit better. That's actually kind of cool. You can scale the dynamic FOV to whatever you want for sprinting and using abilities. I like the dynamic FOV, actually. It helps me know when I'm sprinting in the air. Other than the animation on the gun, it really does actually help me play the game and know what my character is doing. Matchmaking changes. They're going to extend the time looking for certain matching attributes, ship selection, locale, voice preference, latency, increase overall match quality, and then a bunch of bug fixes. Just not really seeing anything particularly interesting in here in the bug fixes. K could remove instantly remove cannons apparently at some point. Some issues with matching and rejoining, or ship preference wasn't being honored even as the group leader. Fixed an issue where players were sometimes unable to interact with the artifact. This happened to me one time actually. It was pretty devastating. So this covers the Wildgate launch patch notes. This took me a bit. The game is actually out now. So I'm going to go and I'll see you guys at the Reach. I think overall really interesting changes. I feel like everything was really fair. I think landmines are still going to be the meta. I think the Doctor's still going to be a really good weapon. And I think that we're going to see some of the same things still happen that happened in open beta in terms of balance. You're going to see a little bit less laser ramming. I think the only thing that really definitely is going to change is the dominance of the aim-E. But that was, like I said, I feel like that was absolutely needed. It was silly for an auto-aim weapon to have the same parity DPS as the base assault rifle. So peace out, guys. I'll see you later. It's a long one, but there's a lot of changes here I wanted to cover and definitely want to talk about, put my 2 cents in as somebody who's played, somewhere around, I think like 60 or 80 hours out of all the playtests. So see you dudes later.